Give a big hand to Bridie Roman.
Hello, can you see me behind the podium? No. Hello, Graham. My boss is in the crowd. He will fire me if this goes badly. Hello everyone. My name, as you know now, is Bridie Roman. I'm a producer at Devolver with 13 years experience in project management. 9 of those years helping teams make games. I came into the industry via AAA at Square Enix, and for the past 4 and a bit years, I've been at Devolver helping devs get games out. One of the main things I've learned in over a decade of production is that creative people need a producer, a project manager, a bad cop. It will keep your project from ballooning in size, maintain a steady budget, and keep you accountable for your decisions. Unfortunately, these people cost money. We don't just do it for the love of the spreadsheet. If you're a small team without funding, cash is going to be tight. So here are hopefully some things that I've learned that will make your lives easier and your projects less stressful to make. I do have some caveats. Not everything here is relevant to every team or situation. This is for smaller teams with smaller budgets and smaller scopes. Someone within your small team will have to wear the producer hat at some point. Perhaps you all share the responsibility, but what do you have to do? Well, the first thing is super simple, and I shouldn't have to say it, but I do. Communicate consistently. I know I'm starting with the obvious here, and we'll work our way up to more complicated stuff. But it does feel necessary to say. So what should you talk about? Well, talk to your team, talk to your contractors, have a weekly meeting where you review what's going on, what is priority, and who is having problems. Stay honest with each other, say when you're struggling, and say when you feel something isn't good. Create an environment where people are talking to each other, sharing opinions, and giving updates. This way, when something is going wrong, you know in advance. It's okay for there to be problems, but they are better shared and solved as a team. However, don't overdo meetings. Have them, but find the right balance for your people and your project. Graham likes this point. This should lower your risk of miscommunication. You need everyone moving in the same direction. Talking about something while you're out for lunch is great, but you must follow up later with a, to be clear, should I go work on this now? That's always helpful. If you're disagreeing on something, it helps to have a medium to refer back to. It's so easy to lose track of something you've said in a conversation, but if you can refer back to decisions in a sensible way, you can resolve whatever that miscommunication is and move forward from there. Where should you talk? You're going to be like, Bridie, we know this. Some people really don't need to hear it. Have an organized Discord or Slack with appropriate channels or threads for topics. Do not communicate business stuff in WhatsApp. Don't do it in your Twitter DMs. Like, for real, and I hope some of you get this meme. It amuses me, that's why it's here. I know I've received work stuff on WhatsApp, and I'm like, this is not the venue for this. Put it in an easy, accessible, shareable place. That way, when you're onboarding new people, there's access to information. And speaking of information, your documentation is really important. So you should start your project by writing your ideas down, duh. I'm not necessarily talking about making a 100-page GDD. I'm talking about setting expectations early. Consider the full shape and scope of the game before you start making a thing. It's so important. This can even be bullet point lists of what you think should be in the final product. It lets you make your game with intention. Of course, you can't spend all your time on this. Design on paper is great, but iteration will reveal flaws in a paper design. That's okay, but if you go in blind with little consideration for the full scope of the game, you risk making it forever, which is a problem I will come back to later. A small set of key documents, along with that consistent communication, can form a solid foundation upon which a team can build. It's not illegal to stray from those documents, but they are a nice place to start. So what should you have? I recommend these. An art Bible will help you set your intentions for the art. It will hopefully make it easier for if you need to bring in contractors. A game design doc, as I've just discussed, sets your intentions for the final product. A schedule and a task tracker, yeah, duh. We'll come back to it, but I shouldn't have to explain. And definitions of done, which I have slides on coming up just now. So where should you do your documentation? And my colleague Danny in the front row will hate this. I think you should use Confluence. Keep your documents somewhere sensible, somewhere everyone working on the game can easily read and access. A combination of these is my preference, but if you're just doing one, I think maybe Notion is good for small teams. I also am exploring Obsidian. It's okay, fight. Anything you do make and share with your team needs to go somewhere, and it should be somewhere digital. It can even be a huge Miro board. Physical is easy to lose, hard to change, and hard to share. If you all work in the same office every day, ideas on a whiteboard is super helpful. Post-it note walls can really help work out issues with game design. But it takes one accident to remove that, and then it's a pain in the ass to put it back up. Digital storage means even if you delete something that you shouldn't, like when I once deleted sort of half of a Notion, you can restore it within seconds. This, combined with your consistent communication, also means that new people coming into the project are going to have an easier time onboarding. And you can collaborate with people remotely. So if you want to work with people across the world, you can. The other thing that we should discuss is schedule. What are your key milestones? When do you think you're going to finish by? And what points you need to hit while making the game? You can make schedules look however you want. It can just be a list in a Word document. I'll hate you for it, but it might work for your team. This is an example schedule. Thank you, Casper. This is something that we're using on Minos. It's just super simple, straightforward. It's not huge amounts of detail, and for the purpose that it serves, it's enough. Everything on the far left can be replaced, and the right, it should just say like what names of people or names of features, and then when it's coming in. It's crazy. Then you can plan who is working on what and when and what your deadlines are. And I like to make it nice colors, but you can make it black and white if you want. But I know that scheduling is hard, and it sometimes feels like this. Schedules are really hard to get right. And producers are largely sharing. I'm being put off because they're filming me. Even the best producers are largely staring into their crystal balls, hoping that they've only got the schedule a little bit wrong. No one expects a small team to get this right first time, but knowing what your key deadlines are can be motivational. What else is motivational? External pressure. I don't know about the rest of you, but I struggle to do stuff unless it's properly motivated by the fear, capital T, capital F. I need a deadline, an external voice to push me along. A producer often helps in this role, someone saying, have you done this yet? You can make as much documentation as you like, you can make a beautiful, complicated schedule, but without something to be accountable to, you might struggle. So I would suggest committing yourself to external deadlines, a point at which you have to pitch a build, a demo submission for Next Fest, a nice launch window before GTA comes out. External pressure can also be informal playtests with friends, peers, come here to a Makers Massive and pitch there and get ideas. Talk to your adult friends who have real jobs and ask them to sit down with you and look at it at some point. Just create some reasonable pressure. It does make diamonds. But while you're making that schedule, account for the unknown. Real-world deadlines, and be realistic about them. Do you slow down for Christmas? Add a month. Put in some holiday. You probably deserve it. And then add a month or two for things you can't plan for. You fell off your skateboard and broke your wrist. True story. You got sick. We don't know what the future holds, but we can add contingency to schedules to build a more future-proof timeline. Constantly blowing past deadlines you've set for yourself feels bad. Try to be realistic so you can avoid that feeling. So now on to my favorite part, and what I really want to talk about today is definitions of done. So you've got your team talking, you've got your documentation, hopefully you've got a good schedule, but what does done mean and what does that look like for your team? The definitions of done are essentially a guideline to say what things look like when they're finished. It's incredibly important because so often we as creative people never feel like what we're working on is finished. But you do have to finish eventually, or the game never comes out. So give yourself guidelines to work towards so you can know when something is good enough to release. Here is an example. So this shout out to Bone Assembly, please wishlist the dungeon experience. This is from their Notion. It's very broad. It's for a smaller team working on a narrative game, so I think that's okay. Having these goals will set a breakdown for your workload and schedule more accurately. Sometimes things might go from prototype straight to releasable without hitting the other points. That's fine too. But you've set a standard to keep yourself to. And I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see. It's very vibe-based. It's giving a rough direction. As with everything in this talk, tailor your definitions of done to your work style. I didn't think that this needed definitions for 3D art. This isn't AAA. But it is helpful because now they can track their progress. Redacted. For Dungeon, we have this nice, clean overview in Notion of where everything is on the project. This way, you know when things are fucked and you need more time. Or when you need to refocus your efforts. You know, if something, it might say shoot out there, if that was a prototype for ever and ever, I would start to be concerned. And so then you can refocus onto whatever is being neglected. But I do have a more complicated view. So this is, thank you to Surgent Studios for giving me this one. You can really get in the weeds and break down games' doneness. This is for audio, broken down by levels. I like to use concept through polish, but you can use 0 to 5 or whatever. And it just, you know, you go by discipline, you can go by feature. When I worked on Just Cause, we broke it down by literally everything. Guns had their own specific definitions of done that were very detailed. So shout out for the second time on this stage, Zoe Brown, for giving me this. And so why does this help? This kind of shared language is incredibly useful on a team. When I say a level is playable, that could mean 10 different things to 10 different people. But if in the place where you have put your documentation, there's a list that defines playable, then everyone is speaking the same language. You've agreed it as a team in advance. The second point is that you need to learn how to stop working on a thing. If you've set yourself a standard to attain, and that standard is realistic, you achieve that, you can move on to the next thing. You will know you've finished because you've already defined what finished means. No game is ever perfect, guys. It just releases. And for the love of God, stop tinkering. No, really, learn to stop. A good producer should be able to tell you when something is good enough and to refocus elsewhere. You're going to have to learn to do that for yourself. Another well-worn producer saying is that perfect is the enemy of good. Finish your games. Set a goal, achieve it. If you spend 10 years working on a game and you're not Rockstar, you might be doing it wrong. Put out imperfect projects, learn from the feedback, and embrace failure. And some of you might be thinking, but Bridie, what if I just say it'll be done when it's done? And to that I say, cool. Good luck making money. I say that because another thing you need to be responsible for is your budget. Small teams can work indefinitely on pitiful wages and maybe scrape a profit. But in these dire times, when there's roughly 1 billion games you're competing against, a responsible team leader must be conscious of keeping costs down. You want to give the game the best chance of profitability. I'm not saying cut corners, but a game worked on for 10 years has a much bigger hill to climb to get to that profit than a game that took 1 or 2. This is why all that stuff about scope, about knowing what done means, accountability is important. I would so love to see people tinker till it is their perfect vision of a game. But unless you're making an era-defining masterpiece that defies the odds on sales, that's a recipe for disaster. So if you're Eric Barone working on Haunted Chocolatier, he can take however he wants. Stardew continues to sell. Chocolatier will probably do crazy numbers. He is financially secure, for now, at least. You most likely are not. If you're rolling your eyes at this because you are making art, and your art isn't all about the money you make, that is cool. But I just want to see more of you become rich enough to buy a house, especially everyone in this room. Our art is so meaningful, and video games are art, but paying off your mortgage is pretty meaningful too. So while you're thinking about budget, it might be worth costing out features. So for example, you've decided that you want to do a console port. How much will it actually cost you to do it? Have you got the budget for compliance, QA, extra time getting the build to work well on the platform, performance and stuff, platform-specific features? All of that will add to your budget and probably push your schedule along. So can you prove that the game will sell on that platform at launch? Is it a worthwhile return on investment? Do you have time to support post-release content? If you don't, cut this and spend your money on something else. So Abu actually spoke about this yesterday in his talk. I don't know if everyone was here, but they cut stuff from Zao so that they could meet their schedule, and it resulted in a cleaner, better game. Basically, ask yourself, does this increase the amount of time needed to make the thing versus what is the return? Don't be afraid to cut features for a better product. With all this in mind, though, don't overproduce. When you Google game production, you're going to find links to things about like waterfall, agile, scrum. Ugh. Even as a producer, talking about them in the context of small game dev makes me cringe. It makes sense for AAA or for teams in the up to hundreds or thousands of devs with massive scopes and big budgets. But if you're sort of 5 to 10 people, just find something that works. Do it for as long as it works. If it stops working, bin it. Find something new. How do you know if something's wrong? Well, no one's doing it. You find, how do you know if it's working? You're having fun making the thing and you're sticking to the deadlines you've set. If it's working, then you're not spending every waking hour on documentation instead of implementation, but you are engaging with the processes that you've set up. They're actively helping you, not being neglected, and you're moving at a pace that feels comfortable for you. So if your team like having a well-made Jira, that's great. It's not that scary, guys. But if it's just a spreadsheet, that's fine too. Find something that works. Do have something, but don't keep it around if everyone hates it and hasn't looked at it in months. We don't need to do things just because. We need to do them because they're actually useful. So here's my little recap. Collaborate through consistent communication. Set up key documentation, define what done means, be realistic, finish your games, stop spending money, and release something you're proud of. But, oh, did you think I would put myself out of a job? Many successful teams have gotten by without production. A lot of them are in this room. I consider them the exception, not the rule. If you're pitching a game out, consider the scope of your project and then maybe add space for a producer in the budget. It doesn't have to be full-time. They can be part-time at key milestones. They can be a day or two a month. If your team is on the larger size or the scope of the game is complicated, hire one full-time. It takes that responsibility off someone who can be making the game so that there's a person there to help you with all the stuff that I've just talked about. There is a reason we exist. It's not just to take notes or loom menacingly. And I joked about us being bad cops, but we're actually more like good cops here to support you and help. Introducing these sorts of processes will make your lives easier and allow your team to focus on their core disciplines. You'll have a better game at the end of it. And I will be in the bar if you have any questions. Thank you. Goodbye.